And people want to know, what are tears and how do they work? Tears is the precorneal tear film that bathes and soothes the surface at the front of the eye. And they're very important for keeping the eye healthy and keeping the cornea healthy and keeping the vision clear. When people say, what are they and how are they made up? They are classically 3 layers. There is a mucus layer, which clings to the surface of the eye, and that's because the cornea has a surface a bit like a duck's back. So the phrase water off a duck's back, it needs to have the mucus to create the blotting paper, if you like, for the tears, for the water to sit comfortably on. So you've got this mucus layer, which is like a clear layer of fabulous transparent slime that coats the surface of the cornea. And then the water from the tears and all the accessory tears can sit quite comfortably on that, but it will evaporate. So the third and final layer in this 3-layered tear film is the oily layer. And just like oil in the kitchen, olive oil floats on the water, or oil on the street floats on the puddles, the oil secreted by the meibomian glands around the eyelids floats on the tears and forms a film across the tears to seal them in. And in its simplest, that is the tear film, the precorneal tear film. Now, there is a more complicated explanation, which is the fact that this tear film is in fact the results of millions of years of evolution, and the mucus, that clear slime that coats the surface of the eye, is made up of over 200 different kinds of glycoproteins. Glycoproteins are just great, big, spongy proteins, almost like seaweed drifting out into the water that's connected to the pier on the beach, but underwater. And they're great big glycoproteins that reach out into the tear film, that drag the water in like a sponge. And they merge seamlessly with the watery layer, which is made up of, again, over 200 ingredients of antibodies, heavy metals, antibacterial molecules, nurturing molecules for the cornea. So it's a complicated sea with amazing ingredients. And then finally on the surface, the lipid layer, the oily layer that floats on the surface, is made up of, again, over 150 kinds of lipoproteins. These are lipidy, fatty, oily molecules that sit on the surface and reaching out in towards the glycoproteins. So it's a very complicated layer that's been produced by millions of years of evolution. And the final thing about it that's most exciting is that in more recent times, literally in the last 2 to 3 years, there is a microbiome of the tear film. So just as you may have heard of a microbiome of the gut, whereby the gut is full of bacteria organizing the gut and maintaining the gut, and in order to have a healthy gut, you need to have a healthy microbiome in the gut. And having a poor microbiome in the gut is associated with a lot of autoimmune diseases, a lot of gut diseases, a lot of inflammatory diseases, which is why people now talk about fecal transplants, if you'll forgive that, because it's taking some of the bacteria from healthy guts and putting them into unhealthy guts to make them healthier, because it has a whole axis of interaction with the brain and neurological diseases. And the microbiome of the tear film, there are bacteria that are related, that are inside the tear film itself and are organizing the tear film and creating it into a healthy tear film. So there may be a future whereby we can do tear transplants to give people those healthy bacteria that organize the tear film. You might wonder where all these microbiome comes from. Why are we more bacteria than we are human? Because we have more bacterial cells in our body than we have human cells in our body. And part of this is because back in the day, when we dragged ourselves out of the soup to become land-living animals, we took with us the most intelligent organisms that existed on the planet at the time, and they were the unicellular organisms, the bacteria. And the bacteria are still making us what we are, be it our gut or our brains or our tear films, to manage and orchestrate the ingredients within the tear film. So the tear film is an incredible, magical source of the most wonderful proteins and most wonderful functioning system. To replicate the tear film in a teardrop is very difficult, because our own tears have been made by a biological organism that's been developing for the past millions of years, and to create those ingredients in a bottle from a factory is very difficult. But understanding more about the tear film, what it does and how it acts, allows us to start to put in the kind of molecules, the kind of vitamins that we want to see in a bottle of tears.